Greetings, science fiction and fantasy enthusiasts. Do you read books? Do you watch films? Do you hate deodorant? Then welcome to our podcast. You're listening to No Deodorant in Outer Space with Ryan Sean O'Reilly. Now, let's get started.
Welcome back, everyone. Through the magic of podcasting, we are back together, and we are going to discuss the Netflix series of The Haunting of Hill House, which was directed and created by Michael Flanagan. It was a 10-episode arc. It actually came out after we recorded the previous 2 episodes on the 2 feature film versions of the book. But it released before we're going to release this episode. So we had an opportunity to kind of follow up with each other and watch that and then discuss it. And so I have Amanda back on the phone. Amanda, say hello.
How are you? Hello.
I'm doing okay. And also Laura.
Good. Hi, everyone.
Okay. So the gang's all here and we're ready to get into it. So like I said, this was directed by Michael Flanagan. I'll just do like kind of a quick bio on him. I listened to some podcasts. One of them was Postmortem, and another one was Shockwaves by Blumhouse. I don't know if any of you guys had a chance to check one of those out. He seems like he's like an up-and-coming sort of horror director. Well, he's kind of established now, but he's like sort of younger, right? He's born in 1978. I guess young by my standards because he's like close to my age.
Right. Well, that's young. That's my age, so definitely.
Yeah, so we'll go with that.
Uh-huh.
What I learned about him was that he was actually born in Salem, Massachusetts. I think he got interested in the history of that place, but I don't know if he like really remembered it when he lived there because his father worked for the Coast Guard, so he bounced around a bit. And they ended up settling in Maryland where he spent like his high school years. He was interested in horror fairly early on. He kind of recalled in these interviews like going and seeing like the VHS cassette tapes in stores and like all the crazy horror images on stuff for those. And I mean, I remember, I'm sure you guys remember growing up and going to the video store and seeing the covers of VHS cassettes and all the...
I had all those VHS covers memerized.
Yeah, it was like stuff that you weren't allowed to see yet or whatever. It was just like...
Exactly, yeah.
So a couple things that he mentioned in these interviews that stuck out to him was the film Killer Clowns from Outer Space. He said that freaked him out. I never seen that. I don't know if either of you guys have. Yeah, have you seen it, Laura?
I have not. I have, yeah. It's very campy. It's kind of a comedy. It's a good one. I guess it would scare a little kid, definitely.
It's like an over-the-top kind of horror film.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He also mentioned Michael Jackson's Thriller, and I can remember being scared of that when I was a kid.
Oh, yeah, that video, yeah. Oh, yeah, that was a freaky video for sure. The zombies.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And also just like the lead up to it, and you get the Vincent Price voiceover and stuff, and it was quite the release when it came out. And another film that made an impression on him was Jaws.
Oh, man.
Oh, God.
Which obviously, that's a classic.
Go ahead.
I never felt the same about the ocean again. Sorry.
Yes. That was Spielberg, right?
Yeah, Spielberg directed it, right? Yeah.
I think so.
When
it's based on a book.
It is, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing he mentioned that I thought was interesting was the show Fraggle Rock. Which was a Henson Muppet creation. He said there was the terrible tunnel was a feature of the show. I don't know if that was the tunnel they had to go in or no. That was just like a tunnel that. Do you remember it?
Yeah.
Did you guys watch that?
Yes. Yeah, there was a tunnel, and it went to a subterranean world. I do remember it was like a warp underneath, and you'd go through the tunnel at the beginning of the show. And all the colors of the puppets were really tripped out, like neon colors, and it was a funky show for sure.
It was very weird. It was very weird.
Yeah,
they were always trying to eat there were like little creatures that lived down there, and
the dozers.
The Fraggles were always trying to eat them.
The Fraggles were trying to eat. Were trying to eat the Dozers' creations. I think the Dozers were always building stuff.
Yes, that was it. That's it. They're building.
And they would just like eat their buildings or something like that. I kind of want to like go back and watch those. I don't think I ever saw like a lot of them for whatever reason when I was growing up.
I think I must have been like a tiny bit too old because my brother, I watched him. It was more like my brother was watching them, so I was watching it with him. But yeah, it was a weird show.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was for sure. Yeah.
So he also mentioned reading books when he was younger. Like he mentioned R.L. Stine, who wrote the Goosebumps series. I never read any of those, but I know those are hugely popular.
Yes.
And he got into movie making early, like when he was like in grade school and high school, he was trying to make movies as early as like 6th grade. He would like take 2 VCRs to do his editing. And then at some point he would even, when he had an edited film, he would then put it on his TV and use a camera to film the film and then play the soundtrack on his CD player so he could add a soundtrack. So he said like the result was very degraded and poor quality, but he was able to like put a custom soundtrack for it. But he made things like The Untouchables he tried to remake, and also Stephen King's It was another one he tried to remake as a kid. So he said he couldn't get into the college of his choice that he wanted to, and he ended up going to a different school, but that was sort of fortuitous because it had a new film school. So he started taking film classes, and that sort of opened him up to doing film, and he liked doing that. When he was in college, though, and I think he mostly made films, he said, about like dating life and what he thought was important, you know, as like a 20-year-old and stuff like that. And he kind of seemed like he looked back at it and kind of laughed. Like he made a film called Ghost, and he said there was actually no ghosts in it, but it was about people just disappearing from a character's life. So, but he was into the films, and after college, he ended up moving to LA with some other people that he knew that wanted to try to make it. And he ended up spending about like 12 years as an editor, working mostly on reality TV and also on like doing car commercials and stuff, which taught him how to do editing. Gosh. Yeah, it allowed him to build his skills out, but you know, he wasn't quite there yet with, you know, wanting to or realizing his dreams. So I think he originally gave himself like 5 years to try to make it out there, and he passed those 5 years and hadn't made it, and then gave himself another 5 years. And then he was starting to get worried that time was running out. So within that time, he decided to go back to horror, which he loved, but he wasn't making horror films. He was just mostly making like whatever dating stuff and before. But he had a huge love of Stephen King. And when he was in college, I guess his dorm room, he had like tons of Stephen King books. He always read Stephen King. Another thing that influenced him was that Night of the Living Dead and David Cronenberg's Fly and John Carpenter's The Thing. So those are all like classic stuff. But they taught him that horror could do more than just like be about the horror. It could also be about like the characters. I think he thought like it was almost like a character study. Like you could take out the supernatural elements and it would work as a stage play.
Yes, that's exactly it. You know, I'm sure we're going to get to that part, but you can see it throughout the series, you know, how he personifies the horror within the characters. That's, I think, huge with him. But sorry, I digress.
Yeah, well, again, but I think he starts...
On your point,
yeah exactly. He starts developing that, or realizing that, and then implementing it his own thing. His first venture into horror was to make a short film called Oculus, and it was originally intended to be like a web series, but they only made the short film, and it got like a lot of attention on the film festival circuits. And there was people that wanted to make it into a full-length feature, but they always wanted to turn it into like a found footage film. And he didn't like that idea because he said then it would take away some of like the ambiguity, and because it would create this objective perspective. And also he wanted to direct it, and they, like, a lot of the places wouldn't want him to direct it. So he ended up not like doing any deals to make it because these companies wouldn't meet his conditions. So somewhere around this time, he's also, I think he has a kid on the way. So he's, you know, so basically he makes the short film. He hopes it turns into a feature. It doesn't, because of, you know, people don't want to make it the way he wants to make it. He's been out in LA for a while. He's got a kid on the way, and now he's kind of getting worried that like he's going to become like sort of irresponsible as an adult.
Right.
Around this time, someone tells him about crowdfunding, which is kind of a new way to raise money. They noticed it from a tweet by Neil Gaiman. The notion kind of surprised him, but they decided to try to make another film, not a feature of Oculus, but a new film. I think it was Absentia, and they decided to crowdfund it. They were successful, and they raised a bunch of money. They raised more than they wanted. I think they still needed more, so they ended up going back to the people, or some of the people that donated in the crowdfunding, and asked if they wanted to be actual investors, and some of them agreed, and they were able to get more money, and also money from friends and stuff, I think. And then one of the investors introduced him to like an entertainment attorney. That kind of got him in with the industry. That person introduced him to producers and stuff. He had this success, I think, with Absentia that he was looking for. Let's see. Then he meets people who want to make a full-length feature of Oculus and allow him to direct it. They don't want to do like found footage. He's still working his day job doing like editing for reality TV and stuff. And he knows that like just because someone wants to make the movie doesn't mean it'll actually get made. So he like kept working his day job like as long as he could. He like told this story about like how he would like leave during like the lunch hour and just take like an extended lunch so he could go sit in on the casting sessions and then come back and like try to make up an excuse of why he was so late.
Wow. Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Your art and
But he was just like afraid. So eventually, though, he pushes that as far as he can, and he has to finally let the day job go. But Oculus does get made. Right. They had a budget of $5 million, and it ends up making like $44 million at the box office. So it's a big success. Yeah. So that puts him on the map.
Yeah, it was a pretty good one. Did you guys see that?
No, I haven't seen it. It's about a mirror, right?
I haven't seen it either.
It's the mirror is like the central haunted object in it. It's creepy. I mean, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
It sounds good. It sounds like a lot of his stuff is pretty well respected.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he did Gerald's Game too, right? I'm sure you're getting to that. That was well received too.
After Oculus, I think the next thing he makes is actually a film called Before I Wake. But this production company that was backing him for that ends up having financial problems, and they, I think, declared bankruptcy at some point. So he makes this film. It's like all done, but it never gets released theatrically, at least on the domestic side. And it was kind of a passion project of his because he was able to make it without any kind of studio involvement, but it just never comes out until finally, I think it did come out on Netflix a long time later, but he wasn't able to do it as like a theatrical release how he wanted. But
that was Before I Wake?
Before I Wake. It's on Netflix now, I believe.
Yeah.
Have you seen that one too?
I have not seen that. I mean, I know which one it is. I haven't seen it.
Yeah. It's about like losing a child or something like that.
Right.
Oh, right. Wow. Yeah.
That's probably why I haven't watched it. Bracing myself for that.
As a mom. Yeah.
Yeah. I think there was some mixed reviews, but he kind of blames it on the marketing because they were kind of marketing it more of a horror film. And he's like, there's horror elements, but it wasn't really totally a horror film. But he moved on.
Yeah.
He kept making stuff, and I think he went on to make like 2 films around the same time. One of them, it's kind of interesting, was a sequel to the Ouija movie called Ouija Origin of Evil. And I guess the first Ouija movie was a big box office success, but the critics didn't like it. They had a lot of financial incentive to make a sequel. So the company said, we're going to make a sequel, and they wanted like a director to come in and do something different with it and not just make a cheap sequel off the success of the first one. And so he was hesitant to get involved with this because it was a sequel and the first one was successful, but like the critics didn't like it. And he wasn't sure about getting into that, but he ultimately did it because they convinced him like he could kind of do whatever he wanted. He said that I think that was his most critically successful film to date in that interview I listened to. Also, it introduced him to, I think, Henry Thomas, who's the child actor from E.T. That's the first time they worked together. And that guy's in this show as well. He's the young dad. And also, it also stars, I think, Elizabeth Reeser, who plays Shirley in the Netflix Haunting. Yep,
interesting. Kind of using the same actors.
Yeah, it seemed like a lot of these films, like I think there's some, the actress in Gerald's Game, that actress is also...
Yeah, she's the mom in the Hill House. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess him and his to-be wife at the time, Katie Siegel, who's also in The Haunting of Hill House, were secretly making a movie called Hush that they eventually released.
And that's great.
You've seen that one?
Yeah.
That came out, that was like a Netflix exclusive, I believe, right?
Yep. And I like it the best out of everything I've seen that he's done.
So is that like a slasher film kind of?
Sort of. Yeah, kind of. I mean, it's creepy. It's a very kind of, I bet it was pretty low budget. It's kind of in one setting, and I think this is the right one I'm thinking of. The woman is like, I think she's deaf, like in her house all alone. And
yeah, he wanted to make it with like no dialogue originally. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
pretty.
wow.
It's
Yeah.
very effective, and there's not much dialogue. There's a lot of she's texting things, because she's deaf, so she's like communicating like that with the phone, and I don't know, it's scary. Can't remember it real well,
That
but
sounds
it was
familiar. Yeah, it sounds familiar, and I don't think I've seen it, but I think I've seen the previews to it, and it looks really good. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess the two of them went to the Stanley Hotel to write the script, which I think, isn't that the hotel from The Shining?
Yeah,
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
it's like one of the inspirations for it, I think.
Yeah, so they went and took a vacation there and like worked on the script.
That's not creepy. That's not creepy or anything. It's just good energy for writing. Yeah.
Just shows you how big of a Stephen King fan he is.
Oh yeah. To go there and absorb the energy of that, and that's hardcore. Like, writing in a place like that.
Definitely.
Yeah, as a writer, for sure. Yeah.
I think the success of those movies was noticed by Stephen King. He was a fan of those efforts. I think Hush for sure. I guess that allowed him to get picked to do Gerald's Game, which you were just talking about, Laura, earlier, which I guess was considered an unfilmable book because it's mostly about I think the premise is a woman is like tied up in bed by her lover, and then he supposedly dies, and she's just like stuck in this bed for days and like kind of reliving her life or something. And so like because of that premise, like people considered it like unfilmable. And then I guess people have thought about trying to make it into a film and never did. I guess Stephen King liked what he did, and they decided to go forward with it. And that's out on Netflix now too, right?
Yeah. It's pretty. I mean, it's pretty brutal, but
I heard. Yeah, I heard that. I was listening to another podcast talking about this, and I think it was Geek's Guide to the Galaxy, and they were talking of one of the guests talks about Gerald's Game being tough to watch.
It is not. It's not fun. It's not a fun one.
No.
Or the host was talking about watching it like through his fingers like a kid, like he said, like it's just tough. I think the actress who's in that is also in The Haunting Hill. Is also someone else in there? I'm not sure.
I can't remember. I can only remember like a couple of people in that movie. But definitely the main woman is the mom
in The Haunting of Hill House.
Olivia in The Haunting of Hill House. Yeah. I forget that actress's name, but yeah.
Me too. I can't remember. Yeah.
I don't remember if we mentioned this before, but at some point, Stephen King, who was a big fan of Shirley Jackson, and Steven Spielberg, who I think we talked about liked the original movie, wanted to do... Well, I guess they wanted to do a version of Stephen King's book, Rose Red, and they were going to have this guy, this director, Mick Garris, who was the host of that podcast I listened to, Postmortem, and I guess he's the director he's made a bunch of films, like Hocus Pocus, I think is one of them.
Right.
He was the director they were going to use, and I guess King and Spielberg just like couldn't get on the same page on like how they wanted to do it. They eventually it just wouldn't happen. As a result of that, Spielberg decided to go make The Haunting, and he hired the other guy to do that. This Mick Garris director was kind of saying that the stuff that Spielberg objected to that's King liked, he ended up kind of doing in The Haunting. And we already talked about that was a new version of The Haunting. But I guess maybe Spielberg still had the option rights to do that or not. Because I don't know if you guys noticed, but Spielberg, I think, produced this Netflix thing.
Did he? Okay.
Oh, I didn't know,
One of the production companies is Amblin. He's one of the owners of Amblin. So this was a Spielberg venture.
Yeah.
I don't know how involved he was with it, but he put money behind it. And probably Netflix did too, or his company. Right. That's kind of what I had about the director. I don't know if there's anything else you guys wanted to add. It sounds like, Laura, you've seen a bunch of his work, and what's your general impression of his stuff?
I like it okay.
Just okay?
I'm waiting till we can talk about the series to say too much, but I liked Hush a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Oculus was pretty good, but I think it had some of the same. When I heard I was watching Hill House, and when I finished, I realized he'd made Oculus, and I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Because Oculus has a lot of that sort of family trauma going on.
Okay.
That same kind of thing. And I can see how this guy is definitely a Stephen King fan, because he's trying to do that same thing that Stephen King does, which is, like build those characters up so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that you're kind of invested in the characters, and then it's terrifying because you care about them. And I think that's kind of what Stephen King kind of does best, is do that character writing. And, this guy is definitely trying for that. He's not just making those cookie cutter characters and then killing them in his horror movies. But yeah, I mean, Gerald's Game was, I was like watching that with one eye shut because it was so like, ugh, it's such a nightmare. I mean, they were all pretty well done, I thought. I didn't see that Absentia. I've been hearing about it always, but I've never watched it.
Yeah.
He's okay.
He's all right. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll go with that. I mean, it does, when I listen to these podcasts trying to find out more about him, it does seem like people are aware of him and he's been successful, like at least making money.
The horror community is very excited about him and extremely divided over Haunting of Hill House, I think.
Wow. Yeah.
I'm just in a couple of groups that I'm in on Facebook and some podcasts I listen to. It seemed like it was interesting because everyone kind of knew his work and they were excited, and then it was pretty divided on people's reactions. So interesting. I'm sure he'll do more things now.
Yeah.
I know he's kind of a big name.
Yeah. Well, let's get into the adaptation. Amanda, let me ask you, can you kind of like lay out for the audience, if anyone hasn't seen it, and this will be coming out next year, and there might even be like a second season by then.
Right.
This is not like a straight adaptation of the book. It's totally different, right? It's
not a straight adaptation.
I mean, they did
definitely not
as like a mini-series or whatever. I mean, they did it, I don't know if you call it a mini-series, but it's a typical Netflix series where they did 10, it's like a 10-episode thing.
Yeah.
Why don't you like lay it out?
No, I feel like the same premise of the theme behind Shirley Jackson's vision is there. It obviously, the characters revolve around the house, the horror of the house, and that the house is an evil entity. However, what's very different about this version, in my opinion, is there are all these characters that are created as an offshoot of how they are affected by the evil energy in the house. So you get all these side stories about one family who moves into the house with various children. It's definitely divergent from what Shirley Jackson wrote. It's totally a different take. There's a departure.
They're there to live. Well, they're not there to live permanently, but they're there to live for a while while the parents remodel it. They're going to flip the house for profit. Mm-hmm. So that's different than the book. It's a family. It's not like these people brought together by a scientist, like with, although they do have weird stuff going on in their family, they do have some supernatural elements in their genetics, I guess you'd say.
Right.
Like some of the characters in her book. But they're not just like brought together randomly. They're there for a purpose. Like you said, it goes into these big it's like deep dive character study.
Right.
What's the other thing I wanted to say about this? So you still got the house, you got this family moving in, they're there to remodel it, you still have the caretakers.
You still got the Dudleys, too.
They still got the Dudleys, they're still the caretakers. It starts to diverge right away because you just, it is, like you guys said, a total character study. And let me start things off by saying the first episode is, the other element is you are in two different timelines. You're seeing the family when the kids of the family are very young, and then you're seeing them as adults. And you're sort of flipping back and forth between those timelines. And when they're kids, they're living at the house. And then when they're adults, they're no longer living at the house. But it's still owned by the family, I guess.
Right.
And they're kind of grown and scattered to the wind. It starts off with, I'd say, action and stuff, and things get going. But I felt confused by the first episode. And one of the problems I had was that I guess they picked, child actors to match the looks of the adult actors. But I felt like everyone kind of looked the same, and I was getting people confused because they were all a bunch of dark-haired kids. And I was like, and then we were flipping back and forth between the child actors, the adult actors, and I was like, who is who? And it's like they spent the whole first episode just trying to like blast you with like, here's all the characters, and like here's them as kids and here's as adults. And I kind of felt like, what is going on? I don't know how you guys felt.
I thought that too. Dave watched about half the episode with me and was like, I can't watch this. It was like too much flipping back and forth between the timelines and the characters. I actually thought that Theo was not their sister at first for some reason. In the kid timeline, she didn't seem like she was part of them. I'm like, is this like their friend or who is this supposed to be? So it was kind of a little confusing, that first.
I don't think they like established it. Like they didn't really establish like how many kids there were like very clearly right away. It was like you kind of were meeting everyone like separately or something. So I also felt the same way. Like I didn't know who was part of the family and who wasn't.
Yeah, it took till about the end to figure out, okay, these are all this is how many kids are, because you don't really have anything to base it on, and they kind of roll the characters out. They start with the two little ones, right, and then the brother, and I can't remember the order of it, but it's, you kind of, by the end, you're like, okay, but it was a little... Yeah.
What about you, Amanda? What was your impression of, like, the first episode?
You kind of don't know. Yeah, you're right. You don't know what's going on at first because you're like, well, this is not what I know from the novel. So you don't, it's a bit disorienting with the characters, and the storyline is choppy. It jumps from one thing to the next. But yeah, I was confused too. Yeah.
And of course they named all the characters after characters from the book, which was mildly confusing. You know, they had all the character, Luke and everyone, and you're like, oh, okay.
And one was named Shirley, which is just a shout out to the author, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And then
they tried to, I think, throw in these sort of like shout outs to the book. Like there was a bunch of things from the book, whether they were like the characters' speeches, the characters' names, like direct lines from the book, but they were just all like put back in like totally different ways for the most part.
Right. Yeah, they took characteristics of the characters and kind of spread them out among all the other characters. And like Theo was the one living with her sister, but
but she still was a lesbian.
Right, exactly. And it's funny because people I know so many people who were watching the series and they didn't even know there was a book, and they'd never seen any movie versions or anything. So that was all totally lost on them. But it was like a little wink to people who knew the story, I guess.
It was like I felt like they were throwing things in or trying to fit things in to sort of just exactly that, to be winks to the people who knew, and yet still fit in with what they were trying to do, something different. Did you guys like that? The shout-outs to the book?
It was, I mean, I liked it. I like the little breadcrumbs. Yeah. I mean, I like when someone leaves a reference to a literary reference that like, oh, I know that. Even though it's like an obscure little reference, it's still great. Like,
and used in a different way sometimes,
Used in a different way, like even the wording of the book, like it's used in one way at one part of an episode, and then it's taken a little bit further in an ending episode. So, like, the lines even of her novel are interspersed throughout the series, which is cool, and other references, too.
I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
There were, some of it I thought was cool, some of it I thought was a little, I don't know, it was like a little irritating to me. I don't know. By the end of the series, I felt so much different than I did from the beginning that it's hard for me to look back and remember how I felt after the first episode and whether or not I liked that at that point.
Well, I felt like I didn't know if I liked it after the first episode. And then I think someone told me that after that, they were just sort of doing like character studies of each character by character, following that.
Right.
And
those were better.
Yes. And then I watched like the second episode, which I thought was better. And then I was like, oh, okay, I can follow this now. Now I'm figuring out who these people are.
Yeah.
And it was interesting. I looked at the Wikipedia entry. I believe Flanagan wrote and directed the first and last episodes. And I think he did co-write some of the other ones.
He did, yeah.
But
you see that at the beginning.
The book ends.
The beginning and the end, huh?
Where I think he was the solo writer on those episodes.
That makes sense.
And it's like, I almost wonder if he was like, okay, here's how we're going to start and here's how we're going to end. And then he like farmed out to other people and asked them to help fill in the in-between.
Yeah.
I think for me, the beginning and the ending were the most problematic episodes.
Me too. Boy, those were the weakest by far. I think the best episodes were the ones in the middle that focused on that episode with the funeral was one of the most like,
oh my gosh,
I was like so drained after that. I was like, oh, I can't even watch the next one. It's just, some of them were really good. The bent neck lady episode was fantastic and devastating.
Ben Nelly,
How did that reveal hit you guys that Nell is essentially being haunted by herself?
I thought that was awesome and
terrific. It was brilliant. the scene where she's falling through the levels of the house. She's the bent neck lady, but she's falling and she's witnessing all these different scenes, but it's the levels of the home she's in, the whole house. But the nooses around her neck was very powerful. That was like, okay, now she's just seeing how the bent neck lady was really a manifestation of her and how it's affected every scene in her life. And that was like, that blew me away. That scene just was like, that's both symbolic and very powerful. The vision of that was good. Knocked me out, yeah.
Does that mean like the house, like, I mean, is the house like making, like, is the house like messing with time as a dimension or something?
Know.
Like it's...
Yeah.
Can we give spoilers in this review?
Yes.
I mean, are we just going to assume
we're going to talk about the episodes? Yeah.
I mean, God, once you start really thinking about it, you're like, what? I mean, I at least was like, what? Like when I started really looking back at a lot of things, God, that episode was really terrifying. But then I thought, like, okay, wait. So was it like it was just like predicted that this was going to happen, and then she had to follow fate? And I don't know. It was confusing and weird, but scary and creepy and sad. That whole sleep paralysis aspect to it was also kind of terrifying. But I didn't really know, like, what are we supposed to, what is the house doing? Is it literally able to reach them outside of itself when they're not there and mess with them?
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's implied, unless you're saying that she's haunting herself, like she's doing it to herself.
Yeah, it's psychological within her.
Yeah.
But then you have the character, and this was mentioned in another podcast, like the character of Theo, who has this like sort of magical touch power where she feels things and she can experience them, which is like clearly supernatural.
Right.
It's not like just in her head. It seems like it is a true power. And it's intimated that the mom has that too. That
that they both share it.
Yeah.
But then remember when Mrs. Dudley, I think it was a later episode, she says, this house makes meals with people. You have to be she says this house eats people. It makes meals with people. Right. So when she said that, it was like, that's exactly what the house is, just consuming people. Or the people there's an energy to the house that's just consuming or making people go insane on their own. But, I think it's implied that the house is a huge part of that psychological demise, that, that's what I feel like, that those spirits in the house are driving the people mad. And that's pretty evident throughout, with the ghosts But then there's always that question, like there was in the novel, like, is this all fabricated in their minds? You have that question going through it too. Yeah.
I feel like it's more like that in the novel.
Me too. And of course they start showing, which this is a pet peeve of mine in a lot of horror movies, is they did a lot of really creepy effects that felt like in sync with the novel, sort of the pounding in the walls and a little glimpse of something and a weird sound.
Right.
Seeing stuff, and it's so creepy. And then whatever that episode was towards the end, where all of a sudden there's this full-bodied flapper ghost just walking around talking. And I'm like, what the hell is this? And that was so not scary and so distracting. I didn't understand why they stuck that in there.
Well, and then what was she? She was saying weird rhymes, like, just she was talking all weird. Like, I'm like, what does this have to do with anything? What is
exactly? I mean, it was like she was supposed to be driving the mother mad, I guess. Just driving her insane,
but it didn't
kill her children. But
I don't know.
What?
Yeah, that was when it really started to fall apart. I think that
that character
episode.
What about the tall ghost? No. Was the tall ghost the ghost of the guy of the skeleton that they found behind the bricked up wall?
I think so.
Yeah. I think we were supposed to think that, but it never went anywhere. It themselves behind a wall, and they kind of talked about it, and then it kind of dropped off the storyline. I don't know.
I didn't understand that. Yeah, I was like, why is... Okay, it must be old man whoever, old man... what was the last name of the family? Crane. Old man Crane, the patriarch of the family.
Right.
But first of all, they made the ghost look like James and the Giant Peach, like an animated It was. I'm like, this is not scary at all. This is really like terrible. James and the Jet. It's like animation gone wrong, and that didn't do it for me. You
didn't think it was creepy that he was like floating and then he had that cane pushing him around?
No, it was a little creepy, but it seemed like a cartoon.
It was a cartoon, and it was not scary at all to me.
What about the
it was weird?
It seemed to me that Theo's lover in her dream sequence or whatever, it had an explanation for that dude, like that he was the skeleton that bricked himself up, like he wanted to be seen or something.
Right? Yeah.
But then that was the ghost that haunted Luke, right?
Yeah, and so then that's what I didn't get. Why? And one issue I had with the whole thing, well, two issues I had with the whole thing out of many. One was that in the novel and then 63 version, which is, as we discussed, the good version, it's the house. The house is evil. The house is, it's an entity in itself. And then it started off that way, but then all of a sudden it was like, oh, there are these ghosts. And these ghosts are these entities that are in the house that are haunting you and leaving the house, I guess, to come after you or haunt you in your mind. It took it kind of detracted from the house being this thing, and it was also now these ghosts that the house had consumed and then were stuck there that took on their own personas, which was really irritating.
Can we talk about the kitten box and the kittens? Can we discuss that?
Oh, if that was in the beginning, I forgot about that. Yeah, talk about that.
Okay, so the kittens and the kitten box completely messed me up because that messed me up. And honestly, Shirley finds a box of kittens outside the house, like in some kind of shed. And you guys still hear me? You're there, okay?
Yeah.
So she brings the kittens back into the house because she thinks that the mom's gone or the mom died. And then when she's with the kittens, you see in the shadows there's like a face, and it's very alarming outside. And then they're like, oh, it was just an old wasp nest or whatever. But they bring the kittens back, and they start to die. They just start perishing. But then Shirley's like, well, they're not dead. They're still moving their mouths. And then the beetle comes out of the kitten's mouth, and it opens its mouth, and that scared me. I couldn't sleep that night after that kitten scene. And they just keep dying.
That was great. That was so messed up. Was so creepy, and that was when I started to get really hooked into the series. I'm like, okay, now we're getting somewhere. This is really creepy.
But then that kind of stops, right? Then I guess they find the skeleton in the wall.
Then they start digging in the wall, which they didn't ever really. That didn't feel like a fully formed idea to me. That whole guy in the wall, like, was he the reason the house was haunted, or was the house the reason he bricked in the wall?
Right.
And also the mold, the black mold that was emanating. They kept finding mold everywhere, decay.
Was that real, or was that like their? Was it messing with them psychologically? I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, the husband. Hugh, he ends up getting mold on himself at the end too, right?
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
When they're all at the red room?
By the mold. Yeah. There's mold throughout the scene. I mean, even in that red room when they're having tea and they're, the mold is very ominous in the whole, background. Yeah.
What did you guys think of the red room? Like, I guess the concept of the red room is that they all think it's this locked room they can't get into, but then we find out, at the end that they all have been in it, and each time that they go in there, it's different for each person. It's like a different way that the house sort of tortures them or messes with their minds.
Right. Their greatest fears, each person's greatest nightmares.
Which is really, really creepy, a really creepy concept.
Yeah, there's this room that you think you can't get in, but you actually have been in.
Right, been in it, and everyone saw it differently. Yeah, that was creepy. And then, of course, they're all in it at the end together.
Yeah.
Yep. And the tea scene where she's giving the children rat poison at the tea party.
Yeah, that was awful. That reveal with Abigail was awful. And
was it Abigail? Abigail or Annabelle? Or which was it? Abigail? Maybe it was
I might be messing it up.
I can't remember either.
It was an Abigail. I think the little girl.
Yeah. That Luke's imaginary friend that isn't imaginary. Yeah.
No, it didn't turn out like that.
That was great, I thought.
That was a twist.
That was the good twist, and it was creepy, and And then you realize why the Dudley, it hooked in with why the hell the Dudleys would stay there.
Yeah, that's true. It really solidified the reason for, because you're like, why would these people remain to be caretakers of the house? Because they keep saying they're freaked out by it.
Right. Yeah. They took her death rather calmly, though, I thought.
Yeah.
Which was weird. Did either of you watch Hereditary?
No.
No. But there was a realistic depiction of somebody losing a child, which was just like wrenching. And I thought they seemed like oddly calm. It was like they knew. It was, I don't know, maybe they didn't know, but it's like they weren't surprised.
Well, I found like
annoying.
Is it because they had lost their first child, who was in the house too?
Had they?
I thought that was the implication.
The baby died. The baby died, and then there was.
So they'd already been through this.
But you don't. Awful. But that's what's so terrible is you don't realize they talk about a body before this whole scene transpired. They're like, oh yeah, there was. If we found your wife, and there was also another body, and you never know what the body is. You don't. Right. But then the horror of it all is that Luke's imaginary friend is real, and now she's dead because she drank the rat poison. So and she's the Dudley's child who already lost a child.
Yeah,
so that was pretty horrific.
And the first
horrific, that part of the story. Yeah,
the first child they lost because Mrs. Dudley went crazy being at the house, right?
Yeah. She was in there 24/7, and they were working her to death, and she just went nuts because she was that energy was just permeating her. Yeah. Not too great.
It was a good twist. I mean, it was definitely creepy. So the whole season starts off with them running away from the mom, essentially. You don't realize it at first, but they're running away from Mrs. Crane or whatever because I guess the husband was trying to take the kids away from the house so they wouldn't see what their mom had done, so they wouldn't have this horrific image of their mom having murdered a kid.
Right. Which we don't even really realize until the very end.
Yeah.
Right. That's the first episode, right? Is he's like picking the son up and saying, "Close your eyes and don't open them," which was really scary.
Yeah.
I didn't realize why until the end.
Right.
Yeah. So I guess is that the mom chasing them out?
I think so. Or maybe they could see the ghosts by then. I think that was the thing. Because remember, they're all the ghosts at the end. Every time is hearing the sun out, and then you see like 100 ghosts standing in the foyer there, and you're like, oh, I guess that's why he was telling him to close his eyes.
Oh, yeah.
The ghosts
and Abigail's there.
Yeah. And the little boy looks up and goes, oh, Abigail's still there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then it's like, that's her ghost. Yeah, it's like that part I was like, oh my gosh. And then you realize she's feeding them rat poisoning. She's going, the mom is going insane and just spiraling out of control.
Which is scary.
Yes, she's losing it completely. Yeah.
Does it make you think of The Shining?
Demonized. Yeah, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it did. I think it was kind of, there were definite moments where I thought this is absolutely inspired by The Shining.
Yeah. And then the flashbacks are almost like It, right? Like with the kids and you could see when I was reading up about this director and his love of Stephen King, I was like, I could see that in this series.
Oh, yeah. You can see it with the tree house and just with It and the 80s and that childhood innocence. There's a lot of this definitely takes place during the 80s with, the Paula Abdul video and the tree house and what the kids are playing with. You can tell the time period, but there's that innocence of childhood too. The child actors are so believable because they could be anyone's sweet little kid, and that
the child actors were really good.
They were really good, especially the little boy that played Luke and little, and the little girl, Nellie, the little girl who plays Nellie. All the child actors were excellent in this series. They were very well cast. And you're just, that's part of the horror too, is they're traumatized. And you're like, oh my gosh, these kids are destroyed because of what's going on in this home and the evil and their mother is starting to turn. She's getting headaches. She's not herself. She's starting to not be herself.
Is she more susceptible to the house because she has those powers?
I think so, yeah.
I think that's what they were implying.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Although then why would that not have been the case for Theo? Why was Nell the next one? I don't know. I think there were a lot of holes in the reasoning.
Why was Nell
that
the first
wasn't apparent. I agree. That wasn't apparent, but I think she just had it. I took it as she's just got a stronger power than Theo does.
Right.
Theo's is a little not as amplified as the mom.
Mm-hmm.
And the mom, for some reason, is being sucked into the vortex. The house wants the mom to claim the mom.
Right.
And it's throughout the series, but you can just see her. Well, the whole thing with the blueprints, and she's making the dream house over and
That
over.
was a great scene.
That's right out of The Shining,
Creepy.
right? With he's taping
Again.
what is it? No work and no play makes Jack a dull boy over and over again.
Absolutely.
Repetition.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's just like The Shining. It's that horrible sinking feeling when the spouse sees it and thinks, oh, shit, they're losing their mind. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you get that weird rhyming, too, like the flapper goes the thing, that Mr. Something poem.
He was definitely trying to pull in some Shining elements there with those ghosts, but I think he just kind of missed the mark.
Like the Tom.
It just didn't fit the tone of the rest of it. It was just like I'm like, why are they suddenly talking? It just did not work.
You didn't like when the ghosts talked.
I didn't like that. I mean, I feel like the whole vibe of the Haunting of Hill House is it's the house, not ghosts in the house, And so then all of a sudden bring in these personified ghosts that have personalities and everything seemed just like it seemed like they missed the point.
Well, and you're like, who's the slapper? Who's this
right?
Like random
right.
ghost.
She was like wasn't she like the crazy bride of one of the original dreams or something? Like briefly just explained who she was, and I was like, why? But why is she? What does she care? Why is she even here? I don't know.
Are they stuck there because of the house?
They're stuck there, but why would they particularly be going after the characters? Because it made it seem like it was switched from the house going after the mom to that character was egging the mom on and saying to her, well, it's the only way they'll be safe. The only way they'll be safe, like that particular ghost was wanting her to kill her kids. And I'm like,
oh, that's true.
What's in it to this ghost?
That's sort of like an inconsistency.
It is.
Yeah,
it was too much. I think it was too much of a stretch. I think that the writer was, I'm not sure if it was Flanagan in that episode, but he had a team of writers. There were different people for each episode.
Right.
But I think that they almost tried to do it too much. It was overkill. They were saying this house is taking over the people, so we're going to put a bunch of ghosts here to drive that point home. We're going to drive that point home, but they did it too much. It was like, yes, but why is this flapper lady's talking to the mom now, and she's trying to drive, say, you have to kill your children. It was almost like that arm, the evil arm of the house stretching to reclaim their victims, but it was too much.
But then it wasn't, right? It wasn't the house. Because that, it seems like what you guys are saying is that the ghosts are independent of the house. They're stuck there. So why was that particular ghost messing with the mom?
I don't know about that, though. Do you think that? I think those ghosts were the extension of the house.
They could have been, yeah.
Or are they
it would have been.
Or are they victims of the house?
They're
right. And I think they kind of were, but I think it would have been so much more effective if they just kept showing the mom going crazier and crazier with little hints of the supernatural, and having her trying to kill her kids with rat poison. That's scary.
Yeah.
They didn't need to do talking ghosts
more.
Trying to convince her to do it. That to me, that was a bad choice. That
they over-explained it.
Yeah, and they cheapened. It was cheap, like Laura's saying. It's like, why would you just needed the rat poison. I agree. You needed the rat poison and the tea party, and that would have been enough.
Yeah, Fury with less explanation.
They built it up with, remember when she got the present from the one son and then she punched it? I guess they could have just left it with things that, right?
Right. Yeah, that was great because then she's seeing the horror of the future, that her two twin children that she adores are going to die, basically. And she sees their death, and that was very powerful. That was like, okay, this is pertaining to the characters, and this is a premonition, and that's what makes this so messed up, is she's seeing it. Yeah. Well, not a premonition.
Is that her gift revealing the future, to her, or is that the house doing that?
I felt like it was the house.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But she does have
he found that dresser in the house, and the dresser had belonged to one of the ghosts, and I don't know. Didn't he find it in what we realized later was his version of the Red Room, too, maybe?
Maybe. I thought it was the Flapper Ghost mirror, wasn't it?
Oh, right.
The one who was crazy and institutionalized. It was her mirror.
Right. It was her.
So, but it was in that. It was the Red Room. Yeah, that was his game room.
Yeah.
Right.
And Steve found it there. Yeah.
And at one point he says something about a game room and the dad goes, huh? There were like little hints that the Red Room wasn't really, when they asked the mom, like, where were you? And she's like, oh, I was in my reading room. They're like,
where's that?
Oh, like you can tell later you're like, oh yeah, none of that existed. Jesus. I thought that was good. That was creepy.
Yeah. And not to mention, like, that scene during the rainstorm, where does, little Nellie go? That's
she says, I was standing here. Yeah, that was
standing here and you didn't see me. And I was crying during that scene because it affected me very deeply.
Yeah.
And, that was scary. And then you get the whole connection that she's saying, even after she dies, no one ever saw me. No one saw me. You can tell how abandoned and forlorn her character is. It's very sad. That part really it made me cry. That part was very powerful. Like, I was here, Mommy and Daddy, and you didn't see me.
I thought that was really
right
scary,
here.
too.
That was scary.
She was. I mean, she was there, and she could see them all, but they couldn't see her. I mean, how terrifying.
So was she in the Red Room?
Terrible.
I don't know.
I don't know. That's the thing. You don't know where she went.
And I think that makes it scarier.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like non-explanation made it scarier. I think they tried to explain away a lot of it at the end. Can we talk about the ending, or are we working our way up to that?
Let's do it. Let's do it. Laura,
all right.
Get into it.
All right. I hated it. I hated the last episode. I hated the ending. What did you guys think?
Man. I feel like I liked part of it and I didn't like part of it. Like, I felt like the tone, there was like this tone shift where all of a sudden it's like a happy thing. We're bringing the family together. And it was like, I was like, what is happening? And then there was another part of it that I was like, oh, and then the Dudleys were given their explanation of like, keep this place for us. And then I was like, okay, well, this is kind of interesting in sort of like a weird horror way. Oh, okay, so this house is like this weird thing that exists, and whatever is going on with our family, this thing exists outside them.
Right.
People have gotten somewhat of a benefit from it, but it's like the house is like neutral evil. Like, it's got evil elements, but it's also got some good elements. So it's more like, like a force of nature.
Right.
That was kind of interesting to me, a different take that I liked. But then, like, when they were kind of like, I think they actually read like the last line of the book or something, and they read it like in a happy voice.
They butchered it. They butchered it, and they changed it, and it changed it to a higher tone.
Right.
Okay, go ahead.
I think I didn't like, I didn't like that. I was like, it became like a.
Well, what the line is, if I may, is whatever walks within the walls of Hill House walked alone. And then in the show, what they said was, and whatever walked within the walls of Hill House walked together.
Oh,
that must
like, what is this lifetime movie bullshit?
This is so crappy right now. Like, what? That part when they read the passage, it brings people together. I'm like, no, that is not the premise of this book at all, or the message that Shirley Jackson was trying to portray. It was just, to me, it was like, hi, everything makes sense now. Now the Dudleys have their family back, and now all the family members are together in the the ones that are in the afterlife are happy in the Red Room and the light. And I'm like, give me a break. This is not how this should have ended in the spirit of the novel.
Is the husband's like sacrificing himself so that the house will leave the kids alone, or just to be with the wife, or?
I guess both. I think mostly for the kids, but then the happy ending. Okay, and first of all, made the entire thing not horror. I'm sorry, it's not a horror ending, and you could have ended it in a really terrifying way. And they took the crowd-pleasing way out because they built these characters that people were bonded to, and they knew people would be mad if they, made some horrific ending for all those characters, but they also explained everything in the end. Like, they tied up two ends, which I think is a mistake. And then the whole, it was like cornball ending.
Terrible.
I mean,
terrible ending.
Yeah, and and I'm sorry, but it was not the tone of the book at all. And I was thanking Stephen King for that quote saying, Shirley Jackson would be proud. I'm like, no, she wouldn't. Shirley Jackson
would not be proud.
Grave.
She'd be upset. She'd be like, what?
She would.
She'd be like, remember when that director wanted to do something, and she's like, no, I don't approve of that at all. She would not have approved of this.
She would not
at any level. She would not have liked that. No, she would have said, this is ridiculous. And it's not in the spirit of the ending of her book at all. The novel, which it's too neat, it's too happy, it's too, now everything makes sense.
Unsettling endings.
And no, it was too, exactly. She is the queen of unsettling endings.
She nails her endings, which Stephen King does not nail his endings, so maybe that's why he liked it. But I actually wondered, I wonder if he made that quote before he saw the last episode. Because, if I'd been halfway through and someone had asked me my opinion, I would have been like, oh, it's really scary, it's really kind of emotionally devastating, and I was starting to recommend it to people, and then by the time I got to the last episode, I was, so pissed. I'm like,
here's what
nobody read the book. Oh my God.
Yeah, no one read it, and clearly that's apparent. But why didn't you put the scene where the demon destroyed the rendering of the house? Remember, in the funeral home, they had the house, and there was mold on it.
Oh, yeah,
Just
right.
put that at the end. Make that the ending. That would have been the unsettling ending that we would have been looking for in the spirit of Shirley Jackson. Wow.
That would have been creepy. I just read a theory, too. Actually, I read a theory that may make the ending less happy. And here's what it was. If you go, and I'm not going to go back and watch the entire series because I can't watch 10 hours of it all again to see if this is true, but they said every time one of the characters is in the red room, which at the time we don't know is the red room, but, when Steve is in the game room or whatever, there's something red in the set. There's a red object or a red piece of clothing in the set. And then at the very, very end of the movie, when all the surviving family members are together and Luke is having his 2-year sobriety party with a cake, and they set the cake down and they're all happy, the cake is red. So this theory said, what if they actually
never left?
All trapped in the red room forever? Yes, which I just got chills saying that. That's what I'm going to choose to believe is the actual ending because it's so much better.
Yes.
That's a Shirley Jackson ending. That's an unsettling, disturbing horror ending that Shirley Jackson would have approved of.
So if they would have ended it the way they did, and then faded to black, and then faded back in, and showed them all wasted away in that room, dead, that would have been the clincher.
Well, you know what? Mike Flanagan said. I read an interview, and I'll have to find. I think it was on some website. I can't remember what it was, but he said that he was going to end it. Well, maybe it was Mike Flanagan or someone else who was a writer. They said they thought about ending it where they would pull back from that scene with him with the cake and the whole family around. They would pull back, and there would be the window behind them, the window from the red room.
Yeah.
And then he woke up one morning and thought, too mean, it's too mean, everyone will hate it, I can't do that to those characters,
no,
they deserve some hope, they deserve a happy ending, I can't write it like that.
Then you didn't read the novel. You did.
Exactly.
You didn't read the spirit of the author.
That's exactly
or honor her legacy by doing that.
It was not in the spirit of the novel at all. I'm like,
now,
well, the 1963
was
something else.
Yeah. Call it the Lifetime of Hill, the Lifetime version of Hill House, or Hallmark Hall of Fame Hill House.
Right, or someone said, it's This Is Us with Ghosts.
That's a good one. But the 63 version, you're sitting there unsettled.
Yeah.
You're not, you are at the edge of your seat what just happened? That's Shirley Jackson, not this, we're all in the light and we're so happy.
But I think that was ridiculous. Let me counter this because they go into the light. I mean, I don't disagree with you guys, but they go into the light, the husband goes in with the mom and Nell, and they're in the red room, and then the other kids leave, which they don't know their dad did that, so they're going to find out later that he's not coming back. But the house still exists. because, I mean, the Dudleys want it to exist. It's still this entity that is not going to always do nice things. Even though, like, they supposedly end happy, like, the house still exists. And, I mean, there's a certain amount of creepiness. It's almost like a sand pit or something, like, that someone could fall into at any time. Like, that thing is still there. So,
that's true. Yeah. So that's unsettling. Knowing, and there they are all happy, but how are we to know that they're going to remain happy? And that house obviously could mess with their heads from afar to some extent.
Yeah.
Right.
Or new people.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right.
I mean,
that's a...
I think Flanagan was asked about a sequel, and I think his comment was that he was done with those characters, but that he wanted to see what Amblin, Spielberg's company, wanted to do. It sounds like this was a success, so I would think, like, monetarily, they'd want to do a sequel. I don't know if they will.
Yeah. For sure.
Or like another a second season.
They're going to do another season. Yeah. I mean, most people that I talked to really liked it, but most of them didn't even know there was a book, much less had read it and had never seen a movie version, so didn't have anything to compare it to. And so I'm trying to think, like, would I have liked it more? I still would have thought the ending was dumb, I think.
I mean, is there horror movies that have these kinds of endings from back in the day? Laura, you're more of the horror expert here, I feel like.
Yeah, you are.
Well, like, because I'm trying to think, like, I guess, like, even, like, the Freddy movies and Jason movies, like, they usually still have, like, some kind of horror thing at the end. Like, it doesn't...
Yeah, I mean, you can have a horror movie where you defeat the evil at the end, and then there isn't... You know, a lot of the 80s movies have that cheap trope at the end where he pops up one last time, you know?
Yeah.
But even without that, there are horror movies where I mean, they defeat it. They defeat the evil at the end, and then it's satisfying. I think you can do that kind of ending, but I think what was weird about this is, like, they didn't defeat the house.
Right.
It's like they suddenly were, like... It's like they went, like, well... And I think actually, like, Steve kind of gives a little speech, or somebody gives a little speech at the end about how, like, ghosts are actually loneliness, and a ghost is a memory, and it was like, it's like they kind of changed the perspective of it, and it was something like, I guess the house isn't haunted, it's just, it's just this thing that likes to suck people's souls into it and keep them there forever, I don't know, it didn't, kind of just did not, I can't think of any other horror movie that changed the tone to a happy tone like that at the very end without any hint of, like, there might still be evil out there, or without, like, completely defeating the evil. And it's like they didn't do either. I don't know. It just, to me, it seemed like a cop-out. Like, I felt like, did they write this ending at the 0 hour? And maybe they did.
What it looks like. I'm sorry, first of all, when you get a team of writers, so many different writers on different episodes,
gotta be hard.
Sorry, but it's going to chop up the plot a little bit. It's going to chop up.
It can.
To me, it can, but I felt like there were times where the plot was too segmented, where it was just really choppy, and people can get confused from jumping from. There were flashbacks, there were flash forwards, there were, and then you got it eventually, but there were instances where you're like, I still don't know kind of what's going on here. So if you have a team of writers, sometimes you really have to make sure that you're on the right page and that the episodes fits into the story really well. And that, from a writer's perspective and the writing perspective of the show, a lot of the writing was good, but sometimes I just felt like dead end scene. It's just like, this is not fitting at all. To me, it didn't fit with what we had seen before. It didn't
I agree.
Yeah.
Wasn't succinct. It wasn't succinct with the horror of the little tidbits of psychological torture that these people had suffered throughout the series.
But like a jump scare at the end would have been not satisfying, right? Like if you would have just all of a sudden saw something like
a ghost pop up behind them or something.
Yeah. In the car, like a total like Freddy Krueger movie or something, or like
that would have been.
What if all the kids crashed in their car at the end of the property, like in the book?
Yeah. Or
that would have been terrifying.
That was terrifying. Or like the scene where Nellie's at the hotel and she sees the bent, like she's getting some water out of the machine in the hallway and the lights keep flickering and the bent neck lady just pops right in front of her as a silhouette. That made me jump out of my seat. That's what you're talking about with a pop-up, like something like that just jolts you, because that would have been unsettling for sure, and I think more appropriate than like,
I did keep thinking throughout are they all dead? Like, did they all die in the house? Is this somehow, like, not
Exactly.
real? And this is all, like, I kept trying to figure out how that could be possible, but
it's all a
it
dream.
wasn't. I mean, I think there are other things that kind of it's all a dream, but, like, that's why I like the trapped in the red room ending. Or crashing on the way out. That would have been scary.
For
that
sure.
sort of hint that the red room still has some kind of
Hold
way
on them.
to get to them, at least,
Yeah.
would have been good.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Some little hint of the sinister at the end.
Like something, and this is still not right. All is not well here still. But like not
Right.
even, it's just, and then I thought they were dead too. I thought they were dead in the house, the other siblings, that they had died. But then I realized when I saw Theo's eyes moving in REM sleep very rapidly, I realized they were dreaming. That was the only clue that I got, that they were dreaming. That was confusing. So you think they're dead, but that's unsettling too, I guess. But it's just...
Right.
Yeah, it just didn't, to me, it didn't go with the flavor of the psychological terror that was going throughout the episodes. It didn't, the dismount was kind of disappointing. It was just like, okay, I don't know.
Fizzled. It just fizzled.
Yeah.
Even though they're, you could say that they're learning to be a family, again, obviously, at the end.
Sure.
And
yeah.
in some ways that makes sense, but it just didn't feel
It is. It
earned.
does. But that's not a horror movie. Like, is this a drama?
Right.
Is it a drama? I mean, I get that there were a lot of family drama moments, which were really powerful, and a lot of them were horrific and scary, which was great. But then that's not how you... Plus, like, why? Why would that whole scene in the house bring them all together? And now all of a sudden they're all happily together when they've all been so dysfunctional. I mean, I don't know. Was it Nell's speech in the Red Room was supposed to, like, inspire them all to be good to each other? I mean, I just think that was corny and unrealistic. And I would have liked it if there had been something in that last scene that had showed that, in fact, the house was still ominously looming there in the backs of their lives, and could get to them.
Maybe Nell's speech would have worked better
so.
if she was giving the speech to the house, and the house somehow felt like it was being understood by her, and therefore she sort of breached a peace for the family because something she did. I don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
Lots of things they could have done. I just feel like they didn't have, how some theories you watch them and you're like, oh, they had that, like, Breaking Bad, like, it all fit together so well, and you were like, they must have had the entire story mapped out when they started the first episode. They must have known where they were going with it. This did not feel like they knew where they were going with it until, in the end it seemed like they didn't have the ending nailed down before they wrote all the episodes leading up to it, which is, I just don't think that was great.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was just, Breaking Bad was amazing writing.
It was hard to compare shows to Breaking Bad.
It's hard to,
Yeah.
But there are certain writers and series that just do that. They map out the whole series, and it all goes together.
Well, I'm guessing that Flanagan tried to do that here because he wrote the first and last episode, but it's just it just wasn't earned.
Discombobulated. Yeah.
I'll have to go back and find that interview and see if it's actually legit, where he said he was going to go more of a horror direction with the ending, and then he changed his mind and softened it up.
I don't know why you'd do that, though. I don't.
Yeah,
I mean, I guess
know.
I could
Send me a link if you find that.
I would love to see that too. Why? But was obviously, you said it yourself, that he was trying to soften it. He didn't think people would like it, and who knows? There could have even been pressure from Amblin to say, yeah, you got to change the ending.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So, yeah.
I'm trying to think, how does it end?
Well, it has a really weak ending too. I mean, I loved that book, but then the ending, you're like, what? They and it's very cornball. Like Stephen King.
Yeah.
I love him. He cannot always nail the ending. He sometimes gets too convoluted, and he can't nail the ending. I know this guy kind of has those same issues, but he does that good character development.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah.
I'll totally watch other things he makes because I think he has some good things that he's done.
Yeah.
I just think this is getting so much praise from everyone, and every time I read something praising it, I'm rolling my eyes so hard because I'm people are like, this is the best horror I've seen, in a decade. I'm like, are you kidding me? What have you been, these are horror fans saying this. I don't get it, but
Yeah, I agree with Laura. I think Stephen King has a tendency to do that at times, where Shirley Jackson just leaves you, like, breathless at her endings. So,
yeah, her endings are, like, amazing.
Solid. Yeah, I agree, for sure.
Well, all right. What do you guys think about making some concluding comments and star ratings? Is there anything else you specifically want to talk about?
I can't think of anything else. I got to air my complaints about the ending. So
yes, and so did I. I second that. I mean, I think my favorite episode was Theo's episode. I think that was, the character of Theo was so well done, and how
I liked her.
She's a child psychologist, and she just nails a terrible thing that's going on with a little girl, and she can feel what's happening to the little girl. That was so good. Poignant. And Shirley's episode was very well developed as a funeral director. And then I didn't like the Luke episode. Was good, but it was kind of a little convoluted. I thought that Nellie was great. The episode with Nellie, that was very powerful, with her husband, and those episodes were strong. The episodes that portrayed the three girls were really, really strong. Steve's episode was kind of I did not like the I wasn't into it.
I wasn't crazy about. I wasn't crazy about him either. I mean, he was supposed to be like a jerk, but I still wasn't just crazy about the character. Not so much because he was.
Yeah, he wasn't very interesting. Yeah, really.
No, bland. Yeah.
Did you guys know that I didn't realize this either? But the podcast I listened to, Geek's Guide to the Galaxy, one of the guests mentioned that Russ Tamblyn was the psychologist for. Was it Nell?
He looks familiar.
Oh, now I got to go back to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, now I remember.
He was Luke in the first one, right?
That's cool. Yep, absolutely. The 1963 movie.
It. Yep. Yeah. I thought it was someone.
That's interesting.
Famous. That's interesting.
I didn't notice it.
Sure. I knew it was someone doing a cameo, but I didn't realize who it was. I'm like, that's someone important, and I can't put my finger on who it is. Yeah, but that's good to know.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I'll say, so out of 5 stars, I'll start things off. I'm going to give it 4 stars. And my reasoning behind it is, and I think I was thinking about giving it like 4.5, and maybe I'm going to downgrade it after listening to you guys. But like, I think it's way better than the like 99 version.
Oh gosh.
It's not, it doesn't, achieve the perfection of the 1963 version. But I was impressed most by the fact that Flanagan tried to do something different, which is like risky.
Yeah.
And he does add the ghost and all that, but he didn't go like over the top with like CGI like the 99 version. I felt in some ways, maybe less than I initially thought before listening to you guys, but like I felt like in some ways I agree with like maybe what Stephen King was saying. Like he did capture the spirit of what Shirley Jackson was going for. Although like I noted, I went and looked, like he was the sole writer in the first episode and the last episode, and those are my least favorite episodes. And the ending, like I said, I liked part of it, and part of it I didn't like. And I agree with you guys; it was kind of like a Lifetime special, and I was kind of like, "What?" So I'm gonna give them a 4 because they were ambitious, and I think for the most part they succeeded in doing something that, in general, kept with most of the spirit of the book, and also was just like survived on its own. So, I mean, and I like sometimes when directors do take a chance and just do their own thing without completely, and he didn't completely ignore the source material. And I just feel like it's successful for the most part on its own. It's not perfect, but I would recommend for people to check it out. Yeah, I definitely would. And you don't have to read the book. And I mean, actually, if you read the book, it might throw you off. I mean, I liked that I read the book first to catch some of the Easter eggs or the shout outs to the book, but it's so different. But I would give it a 4 stars. So, Amanda, what about you? Out of 5 stars, how many would you give it? And any final thoughts you have?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I'm going to give it a 3.5.
3.5?
3.5. Yeah, or maybe even 3.75. Like, it was a little bit above a 3.5, I'd say. But, like, I think the character development is amazing. I thought most of the characters were very well developed. especially the female characters in the series.
And most of the series
like,
deals with that, with developing these characters.
Yeah, with them exactly, and the relationships between the children, both in their adult lives and as small children, and the parents as well. I thought that was very well developed. The ending killed it for me. I just was like, this is so corny. I can't even see straight. That's why I knocked it to 3.75. I did not like the ending whatsoever. I thought it greatly departed from Shirley Jackson's unsettling vision of Hill House. And it's the word haunting. It was not haunting to me.
Right.
And I think that just the writing was strong. I think the script writing was very strong. The dialogue was strong. I just feel like at some points the writing could have been less segmented. You know, the plot could have flowed a bit better than the choppiness, as you mentioned, of the first episode and the last episode.
Yeah.
But the episodes in the middle were very strong, so that's why I'm giving it a 3.75. I would recommend that people see it, but I would also say read the book. Read Shirley Jackson's book before you see it, to look at the differences and know that that came from Shirley Jackson's vision for sure. So, yeah.
All right, Laura.
I am going to give it, if I could rate each episode individually, there are some that I would give like a 5 to that were just so good and powerful. But I mean, I think I would give it like a 3. It had those good characters, and it had so many like really truly creepy moments. I feel like he could have gone farther with that creepiness. I mean, like the kittens and the, some of that stuff in the house, and just like creepy moments that, I wanted to see more of that. But the last 2 episodes, I mean, the last episode and the way it ended made me mad, but also just sort of how it devolved into all those ghosts in the house. Just, I thought it went a little off the rails there. I did not like that. But yeah, in 10 short episodes, he did a ton with developing those characters and talking about their lives and relationships, and that was really impressive and well done. I mean, I think I'm definitely, I'm going to go back and watch that first movie of Mike Flanagan's and be excited to see what else. I feel like I've got to advocate for Shirley Jackson on that ending, that he did not stay true to the spirit of it, but he did do his own thing, which I think was fine. I wish he'd been braver with making that ending actually a haunting, disturbing ending, because he could have. Yes, yeah.
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 All right. Well.
All right.
Well, thanks everyone for participating. Do you guys want to plug anything? Laura, your blog or anything like that? Or
Well, we're not doing much on the blog, but you can follow our Major Horror Facebook page.
Yes.
But that's pretty much it.
Okay.
It's a great encyclopedia of movies and the horror genre. I've been on it. Wonderful. For people that are not horror aficionados, it's got a good wealth of information, which is great. Yeah. Cool stuff.
Amanda, will your next play be a horror character study?
Oh my gosh. Well, my first play, speaking of plays, my first play is kind of a horrific play about, I'm not going to get into it, but it's very scary and psychological. So that I have gone into that area before with my writing. And as I mentioned, a lot of influences in my life are Flannery O'Connor and Edgar Allan Poe, and that's the right name. Or am I thinking of the furniture company? That's Ethan Allen. Never mind. So, those, sorry, it's late. But, just that kind of horror psychological genre, Hitchcock, that influences me in my writing, too. But, yeah, I mean, I'm taking a 10-minute playwriting class, which is a much smaller, which is kind of cool because you have to show the characters up much faster than when you're doing a longer play.
Sure.
So that's new writing for me. So I'm probably going to incorporate that type of writing in the 10-minute play too, just in a snippet. And that's always fun. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at on my playwriting.
Very cool.
Just kind of going off into the 10-minute play direction and working on my older stuff and hopefully submitting pretty soon and joining the Writers Guild and all that good stuff. So getting into it, and Shirley Jackson is influencing that too. So yeah.
That's a good influence.
Yes.
Cool. Well, all right. Then I will invite people to visit our website, www.nodeodorant.com, as well as follow the podcast, subscribe, write reviews. We're on Apple Podcasts, TuneIn Radio, Stitcher. The episodes are released on YouTube. Pretty much most places you can find podcasts, you can find the podcast. That pretty much wraps it up with The Haunting. And by the time this comes out, it'll be next October, and there could be a second season of this. Let me ask you guys, do you guys want to predict if there will be a second season? I'm going to say...
I predict there will be.
Yeah, that's my prediction.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So we'll see. When this comes out, there either will be or there won't be. But I would guess there would be if there's money to be made.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
All right, folks. Then until next time, we will say good night. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
For more information on the topics discussed in this episode, or to read our show notes and find us on social media, visit nodeodorant.com. For more information on Ryan Sean O'Reilly and his various works of fiction, visit ryanseanoreilly.com. The theme music for this podcast was written by John Doyle from the band I Decline. You can visit him at i-decline.com. Voiceover for this podcast was provided by me, Margaret O'Reilly. Well, that concludes our episode. We hope you've learned a lot. Again, thanks for listening to our show. And always, always remember, there is no deodorant in outer space.
Did we lose Amanda? Oh, you're still there, Laura?
Uh-oh. I'm here.
Okay, I think we lost Amanda. Hang on.
Uh-oh.
Hang on. Let me try recalling her.
Hello? Hello?
We lost you. Okay, let me
I know.
let me merge the call again. Hold on. All right, Laura?
Yep.
Okay, Amanda's back. I don't know what happened. If the call died or something, the signal faded.
It just went... Yeah, the line went
weird.
dead for some reason.
It's probably the
ghost.
The ghost, yeah. Well, and anyways,
It was the ghost.
It's